I think I'm live. Well, good morning, and thank you for inviting me to speak. Basically, I've been asked to talk about, I guess, our views as a processor, or where we are, and where you see the potential, and where CETA fits into all this. So. Before I really get started into all this, last night I drove up here, and I don't know, did many people see all the sundogs last night? It was just tremendous. And then this morning driving around, the moon was in the sky, and it's just beautiful driving around here. Got lots of snow. So it was, I really enjoyed driving around a little bit this morning because I'm an early riser, and I go check out what farms look like and back roads. So, Mariposa Dairy, my wife started the business 30 years ago, and I came home to help her, and yes, it has definitely grown. We do have two minor partners with us. Gay Lee is one of them, and basically our distributors in Canada and the US are the other partners that work with us. So Mariposa Dairy, Gay Lee is our supply of milk. We're the processor, and then our distributors do our marketing for us in Canada and US. So, big picture, where's Ontario in relationship to the world or to the big players in the world? So, I didn't put any slides up. I'm going to give you these numbers. I'm going to be giving you a lot of numbers. And so you should be writing these numbers down, and then when I'm planning to talk for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then there's a question period after that you can ask me questions, and answers that I can give you, I will. So, okay, right now, Europe produces about 1.5 billion liters of goat milk a year. Not million, but billion. Estimates for Canada and US, you hear numbers anywhere between 120 million and 200 million. So, which is very quickly about 10% of what Europe produces. Out of that 120 to 200 million that we think is being produced in Canada and US, roughly 50, almost 50 million liters is Ontario. So we are definitely a big, big player. We're at least 25%, if not 40% of the goat's milk being produced in Canada and US. Where does this milk go? Basically, there's two major processors that's buying that milk, Saputo in Orangeville and Mariposa Dairy in Lindsay. And those two processors are basically, we're both cheese making, soft cheese making plants. I'm estimating that 60%, over 60% of everything that's made in Ontario heads south, goes across the border. So that means 40% or in that market is domestically used in Canada. You are an exporting, what products you're producing is majority of it's being produced or exported. Whether it's 55% or 65%, I'm estimating it at 60%. The pricing of the milk, and when I'm talking about pricing of the milk, the price of milk that was a year ago, or the price of the milk that I pay, that I've been paying for, is about 10% above world price. So we're close to world price, but it's about 10%. And that's the food price that I'm paying. And I know there's issues out there and there's some blended prices. That's not taking that consideration. I'm just talking the price that I'm paying for my milk delivered to my door is about 10% higher than world price. And when I talk world price, I'm talking about the price of milk in Europe, and I'm talking about the price of milk in Israel. I'm not talking about the price of Mexican milk because that's That's a whole different price value. So right now, as I mentioned earlier, there's two main processors, and then there's multiple smaller plants that are buying the goat's milk. What I'm gathering, what I'm hearing, is that in 2020, the plant in Kingston, the Chinese investment, should be up and going, and they're supposed to be taking on some goat's milk. And that's all I can tell you is what I'm hearing. There is activity happening on the 40-acre site that's been purchased, so I guess that's a good sign. And as far as Mariposa Dairy's position on this Chinese investment, we think it's a good thing. If there's 3 buyers of major buyers of milk, that's better than having 2 in case something goes south. So, everyone's saying, what happened? So what I see in 2017, and it started in 16, the processors were looking, I'm talking Canada and US, were looking for milk. We were struggling for milk. We needed milk. We needed milk. And the US processors couldn't get enough milk. They were asking for milk. They couldn't get enough. And they looked at their options, and an option they had is they could buy European curd, which is soft shelved, made, put in a freezer. They could bring it across tariff-free, and there was different processors in the US that did that, and all of a sudden they had their supplies, their cupboards had cheese in them, and that's part of the snowball that you're dealing with. It had nothing to do with customer demand dropping. Customer demand is all-time high and growing. CETA. Give you a little bit of background. Right now, or up till until September of 2017, different companies in Canada had the right to import 17,000 ton of imported cheese, cow cheeses, goat cheeses, buffalo cheeses, whatever cheeses that they wanted. And that goes back to the supply management thing. They had the right to import 17,000 ton. And those people, importers, had quota, just like the cow farmer has quota. They had importing quota, and so with the whole CETA opening up the market in the next 5 years, that number is going to be changed to 32,000 ton. So that sounds like a lot of numbers, but there's basically 30 million people in Canada. Look at it this way. They had the right to import half a kilo or 1 pound per person of imported cheese. And in 5 years, it's 1 kilo per person. So what does that mean to you? So as I said earlier, 1 kilo, what it means to, if we took all the goat's milk that's being produced in Ontario and made it all into cheese, it would be about 7,000 ton. So, so you get the perspective of it. The imported cheese that's coming into Canada is 4 to 5 times more than if we had produced all the goat's milk into cheese and sold it all domestically. Now, in this deal, for the next 5 years, the import quota is going from 17 to 32. So every year, there's another 3,000 or 4,000 kilograms come available. It is not restricted to cow's milk. They can bring high-end goat's milk cheeses in, buffalo cheeses, whatever. So that cheese coming in is competing against products, the milk, the cheese that we're making. So, can the goat industry compete? Yes, we can. That's the good news, we can, because we're close to a world price. We're not 30, 40% higher in than the world price. We're, as I said earlier, about 10%. So two things we need to be able to compete is we need efficient processing plants, which overall, if they're not built already, they're being built or in the process of getting there. And the goat's milk has to be close to world price. I did not say it has to be exactly world price, but it has to be near to it. It's got to be pretty close. The one benefit of CETA is right now, if I ship curd to Europe or to Asia, or like if I make a finished product and try to ship, because I have the right to ship, we don't have supply management, I have to deal with tariffs. And I have to deal with, European Union is unique. They really don't have a tariff, but there is one day every 6 months, a supplier in Europe who wants to buy outside the European Union has to submit what they want to buy, and it's got to be 6 months out. So because it's so hard to do that kind of thing, most European Union people don't do it, and they don't import cheeses, they just look after themselves. However, I will be able to export 5 years from now, and I won't have to be dealing with the same tariffs that we're dealing with now. So, not only do they have the right to ship into Canada, we as goat cheese producers have the right to be able to ship into the world. So, what the government offered to the Canadian dairy producers, or the whole sector, for the CETA was they offered $100 million to processors to upgrade, and they offered $250 million for farmers to upgrade to become more efficient. The goat producers missed out. You guys had the right to get that money, but the reason you missed out is you didn't have one voice to ask for it. And I'm just calling it the way it is, because you didn't have an association that you all stood behind. No one could go ahead and ask the government for that. So that $250 million, the cow guys got it all, you didn't get anything. The other thing, since I'm talking about the one voice thing, the other thing that you missed out on was risk management. And the sheep producers have risk management, other associations in Ontario have risk management, but because you don't have a voice, you don't have an association that can go and speak on your behalf. Right now, I know there's got to be people that really could make use of that risk management program right now, and you don't have it. So, the good news. The good news is the potential for your products, for the milk, where we're going, in Canada and the US. What we're seeing in Canada, we're seeing 5 to 10% growth in retail sales of product year in, year out. We're seeing 10 to 20% growth in stores year in, year out on top of each other in the US. The US market is nowhere near as mature as the Canadian market. And I'm not trying to say the Canadian market's mature. The Canadian markets had goat cheese on their appetite in their stores a lot sooner than the US did. And the other thing that's happening is the US food service is all of a sudden waking up to the idea that they need to get goat cheese in their products. If you go into Canadian restaurants, I'm pretty sure 40, 50% of them have goat cheese on their menu. In the States, they don't all have that yet. So there's huge potential there. To give you the big picture, what I see out there, in Europe, about 3 liters per person per capita is being produced of goat's milk every year. So that means you've got 500 million people in Europe at 3 liters. That's where you get the 1.5 billion liters. And we know a majority of that is consumed within Europe. In Israel, it's about 2 liters of goat's milk per person. However, in Israel, it's also 1 liter of goat's milk, or of sheep milk per person. Like sheep milk, dry matter in Israel of sheep milk and goat milk is equivalent. It's about the same. Where sheep milk dairy in Ontario is starting, but it's very, very small. So remember the numbers, 3 liters for Europe. In Canada and the US, it's a half a liter. So we could go to order to get to the same consumption per capita in Europe, we can expand by 6 times based on that math. Now, I don't think we're of the European descent that we all drink red wine and white wine and have our cheeses every night, but so we probably won't go to 6 times, but we definitely can get to 2 to 3 times. So reflecting, I don't see any other egg commodity that has the potential, still the future, than the goat dairy for production of milk. Yes, we've hit a hiccup, but we know customer demand's there. We know customers are wanting more of this. I want to stop a myth. Most people think it's ethnic people that are eating the goat cheese. It's not. It's young, middle-aged, white women that are your #1 buyer of it, and they're bringing it home and making their husbands and their kids eat it, and that's where it's grown. The ethnics are definitely the biggest buyers of the meat, but for the milk product, it's the white middle-aged person. The only commodity that I see that has more potential than this is marijuana next year. Not to say that I agree with it, but you know that it has that growth. So that is basically the facts I wanted to share with you. I'm open to questions. Which mic's here?
Yes, you said the goat system does not have supply and demand within it. So what are you doing? Are you encouraging somebody that milks 200 in 6 months to milk 1,000?
What I am doing right now, I received a lot more milk last year than I was planning on getting because all of a sudden the U.S. people bought a bunch of curd and they didn't need as much milk from Ontario as Ontario was led to believe they needed. So I'm not standing here encouraging anyone in the next 1 or 2 years to be growing. When I'm talking about the growth, I'm talking 5 years out, what potential we have. When that Chinese plant comes on, once things gets reorganized, how many years of curd did they buy in the U.S.? Did they buy 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? I don't know if anyone really knows that answer. Are they going to buy it again? If they don't buy it again, then they'll need the milk. If they buy it again, so what I'm trying to say is the people that are making the deals with the processors, and just to make sure, I didn't buy any European curds, in case anyone thinks, because I've been hearing rumors that I've been buying the curd and I've caused the problems. I've taken a lot more milk than I was planning on, and Gay Lee and us are working through the process. But big picture, there's potential. Customer demand's there. Till we get figured out, whoever's making the deals, make sure they know what they're up against. One of the reasons, make sure your milk price is near world price. That's why I'm sort of saying, if you think you can increase your price because it's not working, you're going to hurt yourself. Does that answer the question you're answering? Thank you.
Stan, please.
Just interested to know, you mentioned that the sheep producers have a major voice in regards to lobbying and stuff like that, but the goat producers don't have. What is the sheep group? Are you familiar with them and how they operate, or?
I think there's a group called Ontario Sheep, or it's an association that speaks on behalf of all sheep producers. The goat industry does not have that. They voted 2 to 3 times on it, and it's been voted down.
Just a comment on that. I think a lot of us as goat producers are worried that if Ontario Goat was our voice, they would, to some extent, like the cow producers, stop doing as much work for us because it was mandatory. In which case, we'd like them to be forced to work for what they get, and we're a bit worried that they won't if they have that possibility.
So just to make sure I heard you right, your concern is that if you had an association and they're basically, if they're getting the money, they don't have to work for the money? But I believe they had a board of directors, and the board of directors could have come from the producers. Am I not correct on that?
Most of the time, those producers represent the larger producers and not the smaller people, in which case, since the main directive seems to be closing out anyone under a few thousand goats, that possibly that would cut us out.
Okay, say the last line over again.
Because people seem to be wanting us to produce more milk instead of, they want less producers giving more milk, and because of that, we're worried that the small farmers would not have a voice, in which case it'd only be a few large people who had anything to say about what decisions they did promote.
Okay. So in my world, I don't care if you guys had voted for the Ontario Goat Association you have right now. As far as I'm concerned, they've done a good job. But what I'm trying to say to you is, I don't care if you call it Pink Goats of Canada. You need a one voice, and you need everyone behind you to say, let them speak on behalf and talk to the government, because you have no one to talk to the government. So you got to figure out, balance it out and figure it out. But as long as you don't have one voice, you don't have the risk management, you don't have to speak for CETA. If you guys have a major issue, who's going to speak on behalf of you? Those are the things that, as a processor, I see is a major risk. Because if you guys don't do well, I don't do well.
Maybe I came in late and missed this, but what is the world price and how far are we off in Canada? And we're obviously too high, right? And
Your world price right now in Canadian funds is about $1 a liter.
okay, so how is a big company able to import cheese curd from Europe for cheaper than we can produce it here?
Okay, so what happens in Europe is they have basically a supply management system within their goats. It's not quota-based. And if you overship that milk to that processor, you are given a lower price for that milk. So you have a choice. You either dump that milk at a lower price. Those processors in Europe make it in curd, and they find a market they can sell it to.
Okay, do you think our cost of production are comparable to European cost of production, or should be?
I would say you need to be very close to the European cost of production.
But are we? Is our climate conducive to that?
Climate isn't, it is a factor you have to deal with, but there's goats being milked in Northern Europe too. So, cost of production, if I see OMAFR studies, I see numbers out there that the average production is like 2.5 liters per goat per day. And I go to Europe and I walk in barns and they're 3.5 to 4 liters per day. I know the cost of production is not the same. And remember, I'm
So
milking
based
goats
on
too.
genetics mostly?
Yeah, it's mostly genetics, yes.
Yep.
Yep, genetics and management.
Yeah, we're just a younger industry too.
Pardon me?
We're a younger industry too. So we'll
Oh yeah,
get
we're
there.
definitely a younger industry. We're a few years behind Europe. I totally get it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions? Yep.
You speak about curd from Europe, but is it not more curd from Spain? And how important is the quality of the curd for you? Because I'm from Europe, and the quality of the milk in, say, the Netherlands or Germany is way higher than in Spain. And we make cheese in the Netherlands also, dus the quality of your curd is really important for the quality of cheese you make. Dus how important is quality of cheese for you, and how important is then components important for you? Dus the level of components, how high?
Okay, so to answer the question, yes, my understanding is the curd is coming from Spain. I've heard different comments of Spain that the curd isn't, just to make sure things clear, I did not buy curd from Europe. I don't have Spanish curd. It is very critical that whoever is bringing this curd in, it is good quality, because we don't want to lose a customer because of poor quality.
If they want to make the cheese from that curd in Spain and Netherlands, they have to make it up to 50%, which they, before that, the quality is good enough. That means the quality is so low that this guy don't want to make, for the pure stuff, don't want to make cheese.
You could be very correct in what you're saying. That curd's not in my plant. I am buying 100% Ontario milk. So just to make sure, I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure we can go to different countries that you don't want to eat some of the foods that are processed versus the food that gets processed here. But in what my wife stands for and what I stand for is we want top quality. We try to do the best we possibly can with the milk that we get. You're asking about components. Number one, fat has to be always higher than protein.
Yeah, we also know when you go to Europe, the components are way higher than here.
The components of the animals, and you guys are getting paid on dry matter. So 4 liters of milk in Europe with higher components is a lot dollars per goat different than here.
It means also in the prices here maybe 10% higher than in Europe. But if we increase our components, then we also are at almost on the same level of milk price.
The price I'm giving you is based on dry matter components. Yeah. It's not based on per liter. I'm trying to compare apples and apples.
Yeah, but if you see here, the components are here about 3-4 lower than in Europe. Mm-hmm. Dus the price difference is a little bit bigger if you not compare apples and apples, because the components are lower here. I know you have to compare apples and apples.
I'm comparing the same fat in Europe and the same protein in Europe compared to here, and that's where I come up with my 10% difference.
Yeah, but almost nobody is producing that high of fat here.
No.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you, Bruce, for speaking about the opportunity in the goat industry. Thank you very much. So if you could please join me in thanking Bruce.